our science department at Wotton Park School. So today you're going to do your science transition lesson at home, slightly different to what you would have normally done in school, where we would have done plenty of experiments, but that's fine because hopefully you'll get a chance to do some experiments today. So let's start off by looking at who is actually part of our department. We've got Miss Walker, who's the curriculum lead of science, and then Mrs. Fox, who's our assistant curriculum lead. Then we've got Mrs. MacDonald, we've got Mrs. Mohammed, that's me. We've also, in September, joining us, we've got Mrs. Mila and Mr. Gordon. And we've got a science technician, Mrs. Barley, who helps us with our experiments. In terms of our course today, what you're going to look at is a course structure and the textbooks we use, the skills you learn in science, examples of experiments, science club, and hopefully you get a chance to try out some experiments yourself. So when you come into Year 7 and Year 8, the textbooks available to you are these Activate 1 and Activate 2 textbook. You don't need to worry about getting a copy for yourself because you will have access to these textbooks on the Caboodle website. You'll be given a username and password, so you'll have a digital copy online. Within these textbooks, the topics we study are mentioned here. So we've got things like in blue, we've got the physics topics, so forces, energy, waves. In orange, we've got the chemistry topics, looking at the particle models, acids and alkali. And then in green, we've got the biology topics, things like looking at cells, variations, genes. In year 8, the topics are the same, but they're just extended onto different parts. So things like within forces, we start to look at pressure. Within chemistry, we start to look at the periodic table. So it is an extension, some exciting topics to cover. And then when we get to year 9, 10, and 11, you'll start your GCSE course. Again, these textbooks will be available to you on the Caboodle website. We also need to carry out plenty of required experiments, so they're called required practicals that are part of the course. And then by the end of year 11, you'll obtain GCSEs in science. So the skills you need, and you may have used some of these skills in some of your experiments in primary school. So if you did things like looking at electricity or looking at plants, you may have recorded data. That is a skill that is really important to experiments. So when you come into year 7 and 8, with all of the experiments that we do carry out, there are plenty of skills for you to develop. So we've got planning skills, where you would look at things like safety, look at the method, look at the variables you need. We've got collecting our data, recording data, so results table, how to show your data, what your results show you. And then high-level skill is actually looking at evaluation of the data, thinking about how to improve the experiment, what to do for future experiments. Some of the experiments we do in year 7 and 8, so for biology, we use microscopes, really exciting. We look at different types of cells, flower dissections. We look at models to explain some scientific concept. We talk about health and diet and exercise, and we use indicators to look at components of cells. Chemistry experiments involve use of Bunsen burners, really exciting. We carry out the filtration experiment, look at acids and alkali. We also look at how metals react with water and acids. Again, really exciting. And finally, for physics experiments, we have plenty of forces experiments. So things like objects rolling down a slope. We look at electricity experiments, and we've also got electromagnets experiment. Now, beyond our lessons, we've also got clubs available. Science clubs are usually weekly, and they involve different experiments every week, whereas a STEM is normally a long project that you would develop over time using the scientific skills that you learn in lesson. So really exciting clubs that you can get involved with. Right, so now it's time for you to carry out some experiments at home. So before we carry out this experiment, we need to think about safety first. You need to ask a responsible grown-up for permission before you carry out these experiments, because some of these involve chemical reactions and also you're using resources around the house. So please make sure you do ask for permission. Make sure you have a clear working space. Have equipment ready before you start the experiment to make sure that you're not walking around during experiments. Be careful with any glassware. And once you finish, make sure you wash your hands. So the first experiment you're going to look at is chromatography. The equipment you need is listed here. So you need a paper towel or a napkin, felt tips. So you can use Sharpies, but if you haven't got Sharpies, that's fine. You can use any felt tips. You need a coin, a pencil, and water. So I'm going to play the video so you can see how to carry out this experiment. Chromatography. The equipment you need for this experiment are listed on the PowerPoint. So the first thing you need to do is get your paper towel and using a pencil, you need to draw around a coin in the middle. What you'll end up with is a circle that looks like this. Then you need to get hold of your felt tips. It doesn't matter which felt tips you use, okay? Sharpies are the best, but you can just use whatever you have available at home. And around your pencil circle, you need to draw a pattern of dots of the colours that you have. It doesn't matter how you draw them, how big. Try and make sure they're not too big, but they should be on the pencil line. And I'll show you in a minute what my pattern looks like. So this is what I've got so far. Okay, as long as you are drawing on the pencil line and not inside, that's fine. Once you have got your pattern, get hold of your water. So normally in a science lab, you would use a beaker to have your liquid in, and we would use a pipette instead of a spoon to drop liquid one by one. But at the moment, obviously, because we don't have that available, we can just use whatever we have at home. So you need to drop water in the middle of the circle one by one and as slowly as you can and observe what happens. You should start seeing the colours spread. Now you can think about why does this happen? Also you can think about why do we need to use a pencil to draw the original pencil line. Okay, so you can keep adding a few drops until you see the colour spread, and this is what you should end up with. So I have done one earlier that looks like this, and you can see it's faded a little bit, but you can see the colours have spread. I use similar colours. So in our science lesson, normally we think about why do the colours spread so far? Why do they split into different shades of colours? And we can use keywords to try and explain these. Okay? Hopefully you enjoy this experiment. Okay, so you've also got a written method available to you here for you to use. You might find that easier. So some points for you to consider, like I mentioned in that video, is why do the colour spread, why is the original circle actually drawn in pencil? What would happen if it was drawn using felt tips? And why do you think some colours travel further? I've given you some keywords for you to help you to answer these questions. You can also use the internet to research further if you wish to. The second experiment we're going to look at is mini helicopters. So for this, you need paper helicopter templates, which should be sent to you. You need some scissors, some paper clips or blue tack, and a timer. So I'm going to play the video so you can watch how to carry out this experiment. Mini helicopters. Now you should have the template to the mini helicopters given to you. If you're unable to print it, you can have a go at drawing the rectangular shape with the lines using the help of a grown-up. Once you've got that, you can cut out your mini helicopters. Along the hard line is where you would need to cut, just like I've done here. And the dotted line is where you would fold over. This is also shown in the PowerPoint. The blades, the top part of the helicopter, will need to be folded in opposite directions so it looks like the blades of a helicopter. Okay? To add a mass at the bottom of your helicopter, you can use blue tack. If you've got paper clip, that's even better. That's fine if you don't. I don't have paper clips. You just add it on, and then you can drop it from a certain height and observe what happens. You can also compare it to different sized helicopters, okay, and see how the different sizes affects the drop. Does it spin faster, slower? How does the size of blade affect it? And how does the amount of mass you add on, affect the fall and the spin of your mini helicopters? Again, you've got a written method available here, along with the technique of how to fold it with this diagram. So some of the questions for you to consider here are, Does the size affect the spin of the helicopter? How does the mass, so the amount of paper clips you use or the amount of blue tack you use, affect the spin? And some keywords for you to use are things like gravity, air resistance, and variables. Right, moving on to our final experiment, looking at mini volcanoes. So for this, you need a small plastic bottle. You need to make sure it's dry and clean. 3/4 of a glass of vinegar, 4 tablespoons of bicarbonate of soda, 2 tablespoons of washing liquid, and 10 drops of food colouring, which is optional. So final video I'm going to play for you. Mini volcanoes. So for this experiment, again, the equipment that you need is listed on the PowerPoint. I'm using a jar that I found around the house. You're welcome to use an empty water bottle or a juice bottle. Just make sure it's nice and dry and clean. So to this, I'm adding my bicarb. So it says on the PowerPoint about 4 tablespoons worth. Okay. And once you've got that, you can add your washing liquid. Now, I didn't measure this. I can just give 2 big squirts, more than enough. And then you can make sure that you mix it very carefully. The next step is to add in some food colouring. Now, this is optional. Your experiment will still work if you don't add food colouring. So don't worry about it so much. It's just to give you a bit more of a likeness to a volcano. So if you don't have food colouring, then don't worry so much about it. So once you've added all of those bits in, you need to make sure that you stir your mixture and so that there's nothing left at the bottom. So everything should be mixed in fully. Okay, and what you will end up with is like a slush type of mixture to which you will add in your vinegar. So I think I've mixed that enough now. I've got my vinegar here, just about 3/4 of a glass full. Now your measurements might differ slightly depending on how big your container is, but that's fine. Just, this is an experiment, just see what works for you. And also make sure that you have, I asked an adult or grown up permission to carry out this experiment. So I'm going to add this in and then mix it very quickly and then observe what happens. There we go, my little volcano exploding. I hope you enjoy this experiment. Okay, so again, for this, the method is written down here for you, and some points for you to consider are written down here. What do you think a chemical reaction is? Bicarbonate of soda actually reacts with vinegar. What do you think gets produced? And how do you think that affects your volcano? And some keywords written down are things like you need to think about our chemical reactions, particles, reactants, and products. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed all these experiments, and we look forward to meeting you in September. Hopefully you have a lovely summer.